All right, hello and welcome to our webinar on the analytical and life science industries. For most of today, we'll be looking ahead at the market hotspots to watch in 2018. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll dive into the source of all this useful info, the 2018 Global Assessment Report, an annual publication published by our Strategic Directions International Division. Today you have myself, Devin, and I'm joined by my colleague, Monica, who helps publish a lot of our useful online content. Mike Tice will also be joining us today, but most likely towards the end to help answer any detailed questions you may have.
As you maybe have seen from doing a simple Google search, there's so many reports that estimate that the size and growth of these industries, even for one as niche as the analytical, life science, and clinical diagnostic instruments. Overall demand numbers and future growth percentages can vary so greatly, so who do you know you can trust to get things done right? We are one of the only market research firms completely dedicated to these industries. Our team is comprised of industry experts, from data analysts with industry-specific training and backgrounds to PhD-level scientists with first-hand lab experience. Our data is data you can trust. Some of the largest companies in these industries rely on our work to make smart business and marketing decisions. To help keep this short, we'll give you a quick overview of the market by the numbers, and then we'll jump right into the various hotspots to watch for 2018.
By our analysis, the overall analytical and life science instrument market is now valued at over $57 billion and only continues to grow in strength. Last year's growth was nothing particularly out of the ordinary at 4.6%, although that did surpass slightly our expectations. There was an unusually large amount of merger and acquisition activity, though, causing market share to concentrate to a fewer number of vendors in some technology areas. Currency fluctuations also affected some markets, with the British pound dropping due to Brexit, and the Brazilian real leading global economies with a strong 9.2% gain on the US dollar.
As we look ahead into 2018, we predict that the overall market size for the analytical and life science instrumentation industries will grow to $59.3 billion at a growth rate consistent with 2017. We estimate that the 2018 growth will be largely defined by the several countries investing heavily in science and technology, which will in result increase the demand for instrumentation in those economies. Some of these countries have been historical hotspots for instrument demand, but a few are relatively new to the table.
By our estimates, demand in China is expected to grow again by a large percentage in 2018, 7.3%. Demand in India might also take a similar upswing if their growth in GDP happens to translate to a high growth in instrumentation. But it's not always a reliable indicator. Latin America has seen some high instability in places such as Venezuela, but other countries, such as Chile and Peru, remain strong pockets of innovation, as we kind of mentioned earlier. Brazil has seen their currency grow increasingly stronger over the past few years, which helps with their purchasing power. Japan is also on the map for increased science and biotech funding, although non-Japanese companies may find it difficult to penetrate that market because of strong performance by local instrument companies such as Shimadzu, Hitachi High-Tech, Joule, Canon, Nikon, and others.
Now let's take a look at a few of our markets and hotspots that you should consider. Our industrial markets, specifically atomic spectroscopy and gas chromatography, have seen high growth in the past few years. But keep in mind that it has been a historically volatile market, and diversified firms may want to shy away from making the sector a backbone of their long-term marketing and sales efforts. As shown on the slide, the industrial market for semiconductors, electronics, chemicals, biofuels, oil and gas all have strong growth forecasts in 2018. Our next hotspot, diagnostics, is one of the most talked about markets these days, and it's not hard to see why. Many companies are investing in the space and adapting current instrument techniques to clinical applications, or they're simply acquiring smaller companies who already have products developed and are throwing their massive amount of resources behind them to help scale, market, sell, and distribute their inventory. Laboratory software and informatics also continues to be a high growth area, as we've indicated before in our 2017 publications. Bioinformatics, especially those involving new generation sequence analysis and clinical diagnostics, is a segment with especially high growing demand. Our last hotspot is mass spectroscopy, is one of our highest projected overall growth areas for 2018. This increase in demand is led by liquid chromatography and mass spec technology, and large upstick in use for biopharma and food sectors.
In addition to these designated hotspots, there's also a number of political happenings in the past year or so that have affected industry growth and may affect it in the future. As we mentioned earlier, the Japanese government has increased their budget spending on science and tech by about 900 billion yen over the next 3 years, with a specific focus on research and development. Also, many are waiting with bated breath to see how the recent tax reform in the US will impact instrument demand. It may introduce some funding headaches for laboratories in 2018, but some good news: as of now, the government has promised to not decrease the National Institute of Health funding. Over in the EU, several member countries, commissioners, and ministers have declared a renewed focus on domestic spending for science and technology over the course of the next 10 years. So for specific countries in that region, particularly Central and Eastern Europe, we might see pockets of increased spending. For the end markets mentioned earlier, the biopharma and oil and gas industries will most likely see the largest increase in demand, while for those of you who manufacture instrument components will probably be pleased to hear that the metal and semiconductor industries will rapidly increase in revenue and will continue to do that in the near future.
Let's take a look at our industry participants. Compared to last year, GE is no longer in our top 10 companies by revenue. In fact, Merck and MilliporeSigma, with their strong chromatography and consumable sales, have bumped GE off the list and everyone else down one spot. But other than that, the rankings have stayed pretty consistent, with the only other changes being that Shimadzu and Bruker have switched places. So this actually wraps up our forecast and hotspot overview, and we'll be moving into our global assessment report for this year. So actually, even the smallest changes in the industry can impact your decision-making process. So if you'd like more information on this large and constantly changing market, our team publishes a global assessment report on the analytical and life science instrument industries every year. This gold standard of market research for our field, we've been publishing this report for 2 decades, and no other competing report measures size and growth with such reliable accuracy. As you can see, our global report is pretty massive, not only in size, but the sheer amount of information it contains is pretty noteworthy. All of these components listed here will enhance your ability to determine where there is growth potential and how best to market and place your product. In addition to our in-depth coverage and analysis, we also include 10 technology group overviews that summarize other important product segments of the industry. It can seem overwhelming at first, but as I mentioned, this huge amount of data is extremely useful in making large business decisions with confidence. So in the end, what will all these pretty charts, graphics, and data tables help you to understand? They'll help you to understand the overall size, growth, and segmentation of these industries, the relative market share of leading vendors for 51 product categories, the projected growth of the market out to 2022, including aftermarket products like consumables and reagents, along with other services. The business and technology developments that impacted the growth of the market and what will impact the growth in the future has also been included in our report.
Due to the complex nature of these two markets, we've done our best to define 10 technology categories that all analytical and life science instruments, software, and services fall underneath. The global report used to be published every 2 years, but now we have moved to publishing a new report every year to keep data as current as possible, because we all know that the most current data is probably the best data to use for making business decisions. The ones on the top right and to the left in light blue will be updated annually, along with some select technologies in the orange lab equipment section you see there. The 4 categories in gray, along with the rest of the lab equipment technologies, will be updated every 2 years. This may change in the future as we add some additional staff and analysts, just because it's such a huge undertaking. And I just wanted to let you know that those gray uh, those gray technology categories and the other laboratory equipment categories will be receiving a summary update that kind of gives you a general overview of that particular market and overall demand, segmented demand via product category. They just don't include specific market briefs. So for each of those 10 technology categories, in the report we refer to them as technology sections. So each of the 10 major sections, like chromatography, includes its own summary overview, demand by products, demand by region, application segmentation breakdown, as well as a bit of analysis around the competitive situation. To give you a better idea of the amount of detail that can be found within our report, here's an example from our previous global report, the 2017 Global Assessment, that lists out the various technology briefs covered in the larger chromatography section. So you can see the section on the top and the briefs below that. So for each section, you have these various market briefs. And as one example that you see here on the right, underneath chromatography, one of them is Analytical HPLC. Each of the 51 product market briefs consists of the following subsections: a technology overview that gives some instrument examples, product segmentation and market demand that includes initial systems, aftermarket products, offered services, and we also include data such as unit volumes and average prices for new and used instruments, application segmentations, regional demand based on countries, market share by vendors, and a vendor participation matrix. At the end of each market brief, we also include a list of recent business developments, such as product announcements, mergers and acquisitions, and a future outlook for that particular technology. New this year, we actually now include key market dynamics for each of these market briefs that kind of show you what has influenced the market in the past and what might influence it in the near future.
Honestly, the breadth and depth of the Global Assessment Report is unmatched. For most of our data, we cover the many possible end markets for analytical and life science instrumentation, including agriculture, cement, government testing, pharmaceutical, textiles, and so many others. In addition to our standard report, we're now offering an even higher tier option that places the most up-to-date market data directly at your fingertips, the Global Data Stream. The global data stream is a fancy way to say that you'll receive the full global report, but you will also receive data updates at the end of each financial quarter over the course of a year. These data updates will come in a highly adaptable Excel format, so you can copy, paste, and insert your own numbers pretty easily, which is perfect for presentations and complementing internal data modeling.
So this report is extremely large. We've obviously covered that. But how else can you use it to make important business and marketing decisions? One way our clients use this report is to look before they leap. With our demand forecasts out to 2022 and data around unit prices and sales volumes, you can easily see the potential for new market entries. If a segment is experiencing slow year-to-year growth and low overall unit sales, it's probably not the best time or place to develop a new product to that particular market. You can also use our global report to keep an eye on the competition. Is there already a dominant market leader? Is the market fragmented or dominated? Who produces, manufactures, and supplies each product type within a certain instrument category? You can see off to the right there an example for a vendor participation matrix for gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy. Like I said, we include those in every market brief, and you can use them to see if there's a gap in coverage where your company can potentially fill the niche.
With all this easily searchable data on hand, you can better focus your marketing efforts, as I mentioned before, by knowing historical pulse of the market, making smart and informed investments, and establishing partnerships with the leading manufacturers and suppliers in any given product space. And these are only a handful of the potential uses and capabilities.
So that kind of wraps up our video for today. If you are interested in purchasing the Global Assessment Report, you can either visit our website and place an order there, or simply contact our report sales team at the below email address, reports@genetodrug.com. Please keep in mind that if you purchase the Global Assessment Report, you will receive a PDF version of the report and a PowerPoint version with Excel data inside that you can easily copy and paste to your own documents. And that's actually a new offering that we're giving this year. Data stream buyers, as Monica mentioned earlier, will also receive data updates in Excel at the end of every financial quarter. Both versions of the Global can be purchased or pre-purchased for a 10% discount prior to February 28th, but please keep in mind this only lasts until the report releases on that day. Either way, you'll receive a company-wide license so the report can be distributed within your entire organization, including any subsidiary companies you might have, as well as holding companies. Also, if your business is more focused on a particular technology area, we do sell the individual sections for $6,000 each, such as mass spectrometry or chromatography. Also, if your budget and product focus is very limited, you can also pick out specific market briefs for only $9.95. For 15 and 20 pages worth crammed full of data, $1,000 is a pretty good deal.
Well, that concludes our webinar for today. We really appreciate the time you spent with us and hope the value of our global assessment report is clear. There's really nothing comparable to it in the market research industry, particularly because of all the time and effort our team has put into making sure all the details are present. Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to reach out to us.